All right. So hi, everyone. Thanks again for having us. For today, Rebecca and I will be presenting on behalf of the Climate Innovation team. But as you can see, the whole crew is here. We're grateful for the opportunity to provide you all with a briefing, an update of our program, what we're working on, and how we feel that these projects fit into the greater alignment of our organization. In terms of structure, our team will be introducing ourselves, and I will share climate team's strategic priorities and provide a few examples of the project that we're working on at the moment. Rebecca will join halfway through, and we will end the presentation by talking about the emerging opportunities that we're seeing and shared what we've heard and learned from communities and the partners. And as always, we should have ample time for questions and answer at the end of our presentation as well. So we can go to the next slide. So our climate team currently have 4 members: Joseph, Michelle, Rebecca, and myself. Joseph, could you introduce the team?
Sure. Well, I'll start with myself. I'm Joseph Pallant. I've been the Director of Climate Innovation here at Ecotrust Canada. It'll be 5 years this autumn, and it's a delight to be working with all of you. Over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Joseph. So I'm Michelle Connolly. I joined the climate team in 2021 as a project manager, and I've been working on forest-based climate solutions work for about 8 years. Over to you, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca. I've been at Ecotrust for about 9 months now. My background is in sociology. Before joining the climate team, I was working in education and community harm reduction. And now I'm using that skill set and learning a bunch of new things in my position as community program manager for the climate innovation team. Over to you, Kaylin.
Thanks, Rebecca. And my name is Kaylin Sun. I'm the newest addition to the climate team. I've been with Ecotrust Canada for about 6 months now. I graduated with a Master of Sustainability Management from University of Toronto. And since then, I worked on corporate sustainability at RBC, as well as then going into consulting and policy research at a company called Clear Blue Markets, focused on Canada's carbon markets research. And now I'm using those skill sets and experience that I've gained at Ecotrust Canada climate teams, our work on carbon policy, as well as some project management responsibilities. So next slide, please. At Climate Innovation, we envision a future where communities across Canada manage their lands and water to protect biodiversity, enhance Indigenous rights and title, and provide sustainable economic benefits for the community by getting and keeping carbon from the atmosphere. We truly believe that when community and economic well-being, a community and ecosystem well-being, economic livelihood, as well as climate mitigation, when they all come together, that's when we see meaningful change happen. Throughout the presentation, we'll be using a few terms, which we'll explain now. First term is natural climate solutions. So when we say natural climate solutions, we are referring to the actions that address the climate crisis through the protection of natural ecosystems and the restoration of the degraded ones. The second term is carbon finance. Often when people hear carbon finance, people make the assumption that we're solely talking about carbon offsets. Even though carbon offset is an important and very viable carbon finance pathways, it's only one of the many pathways available. Government programs such as Canada's Nature Smart Climate Solutions Fund, which we'll go into detail later in the presentation, as well as philanthropy funding focused on climate outcomes, they all are some of the options that can be directed towards communities for the work they do to sequester, store, and manage carbon. Next, we're going to talk about our team's strategic priorities. There are 3 strategic priorities that guide climate innovations activities today. They are 1, working cooperatively with communities to enhance capacity for developing natural climate solutions project. And 2nd, policy development, ensuring that communities have transparent, adaptable carbon finance pathways that grow their sovereignty to manage their lands and water for climate, conservation, and community benefit. And thirdly, getting our hands dirty to support the development of specific community-led carbon finance projects. So the first strategic priority, building community capacity. One gap that we're often seeing is the need for plain language resource on carbon finance, as well as other conservation finance pathways. So we started this work with building the Forest Carbon Community Toolkit a few years back, which focused on creating resources and tools to enable more forest carbon offset project get off on the ground that is specific to the BC context. Next slide, please. With funding from Metcalf Foundation, we have formed a partnership with BC Assembly of First Nations to create essential capacity building tools and content for First Nations in BC. For BCAFN, they have received a mandate from Chiefs and Assembly to do this work as a response from a growing demand from nations that are asking for accessible information to be available on carbon offset projects. So we're very grateful to be working with BCAFN and partner together on this work. What we're envisioning and building, as you can see on the screen, is the First Nations Carbon Toolkit. And it's available online, which you can visit today at carbontoolkit.org. So First Nations Carbon Toolkit is a digital home for the knowledge products that we have built to date. One is the Forest Carbon Community Toolkit, and then the other one is the Project Ideas Note Builder. So both of them serve respectively the element of education as well as application. While we are still in the process of getting all the elements ready and the backstage for the website, once this website is ready, community users can go through the toolkit and read about climate change and natural climate solutions, carbon offsets and carbon markets, First Nations rights and carbon, case studies of Indigenous-led carbon projects, as well as planning and documenting their carbon project. Once a community user feels that they're ready to start planning their own project, they can use our Project Idea Note Builder to compile the details needed for developing and certifying their very own forest carbon project. As part of this digital project, we are super excited for also hosting a First Nations design contest. And we're looking for youth designer to design a logo for us. And we're hoping them, through their art and design, they can share with us what they mean, what they think that Indigenous-led conservation, community stewardship, and climate action means to them. We're very excited to see the design come through. The second strategic priority is policy development. And our work in policy development ensures that our Indigenous partners have effective carbon finance pathways that are available to fund the priority work that they need to see to get off on the ground. It also helps us to keep a pulse on the development of key regulations and framework on carbon finance at a provincial through an international level, which are super critical for us best advising our partners and visioning the future. The climate innovation team have been actively providing recommendations and feedback on the development of BC's Forest Carbon Protocol, which is called Forest Carbon Offset Protocol 2.0 or FCOP 2.0. And once the FCOP 2.0 is launched, this protocol would have a significant influence on how forest carbon offsets will be developed in the province. And what we are really striving to do and working towards is to ensure that the protocol enables high quality Indigenous-led projects to thrive. And our director, Joseph, sits on Environment and Climate Change Canada's technical expert on a federal protocol, which is the Federal Improved Forest Management Offset Protocol. He is also a member of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, supporting the development of the Paris Agreement on forest carbon methodologies. So an exciting example and a new addition to our work is our work to support the Environment Climate Change Canada, ECCC, to build tools for this new federal funding called the Nature Smart Climate Solutions Fund. This initiative is a 1.4 billion 10-year program to directly invest in nature in order to achieve climate impact and address biodiversity loss. We have successfully negotiated a 5-year, 1.2 million contribution agreement with ECCC to do 3 things. 1, to deliver capacity building tools such as toolkits for communities to understand and better engage with the fund. And 2nd, to develop project applications and reporting tools so that ECCC can best select the most effective projects and accurately report their climate impact. And thirdly, so that we get the chance to directly work with community applicants to develop their Nature Smart Climate Solutions Fund backed projects. We're very proud to say that the creation of this federal initiative, the Nature Smart Climate Solutions Fund, was heavily influenced by the policy outreach that was done by Ecotrust Canada from 2018 to 2021 as we developed this concept of a forest carbon economy fund. And next, I'll pass it to Rebecca.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. So I'm going to be talking about our 3rd strategic priority, and I'm going to touch briefly on 4 important on-the-ground projects. So 2 of these projects are long-term and ongoing. Those are the Cheakamus Community Forest and our work with Ecotrust Development in the Missinaibi Forest. And the other 2 are newer projects, our work with coastal communities through Coast Funds, and the pilot projects that will be emerging through our work with ECCC and Nature Smart Climate Solutions Fund. So first up is the Cheakamus Community Forest. And this is a project that I'm sure all of you are somewhat familiar with, but I wanted to include it here because it remains incredibly relevant to our work today. So the Cheakamus Community Forest is still only one of 2 Indigenous owned carbon projects on Crown land in BC, and the other one is the Great Bear Carbon Project. So the Cheakamus is really still a key case study that's used widely from the Government of Canada to technical working groups to demonstrate what an Indigenous-led carbon project looks like when done well. So when we're talking to communities, our partners, there's often an ask to see a case study, to see this work in action. And it's a real privilege and quite important to have Ecotrust Canada's name attached to this project. The Cheakamus is an example of what is possible when projects are community-led, but also, and importantly, it's a project that shows what's possible right now within the current regulations and policies in BC. The Cheakamus is a reminder to us that these projects are ongoing and alive, and Ecotrust Canada continues to be involved as needed as these projects evolve. So next up, we have Ecotrust Development. We have been partnered with Ecotrust for over 10 years now, which is amazing. Together, we have co-launched the Northeast Superior Regional Chiefs Forum for 5 First Nations in Ontario to build a conservation economy enabling them to sit as shareholders in the management of Ontario's 1 million hectare Missinaibi forest. More recently, the climate team has collaborated with Wekotowin to issue a project idea note. So a project idea note is a key milestone in carbon project development. It captures the key knowledge, data, and inspiration behind a project, and it puts it into a standardized form that can then be used to describe and advance the project with key stakeholders. In our work with Wekotowin, we also engage the communities on how their values can be realized through carbon finance management. So this takes shape in a couple of different ways and is always changing based on Wekotowin's needs. Lately, we've been delivering climate-focused workshops for the Wekotowin Youth Group, which is a real nugget of joy for our team. And this year, we're planning a trip to Northeast Ontario to do some mapping of high priority areas for conservation as identified by community members, which I think we're all super excited to dive into. Wekotowin has been and remains a really key partnership for the climate team, and I think we're all really grateful to be able to continue working with them in 2023. Next, one of our newer projects. So we're working with 4 First Nations and 2 regional bodies within the Great Bear Rainforest through Coast Funds to explore forest and watershed conservation and restoration opportunities. So the nations and regional bodies we're working with are at various stages of project development. So some will have a fully fleshed out idea and some are more just curious about the possibilities. So our work here is really providing support by doing some of the heavy lifting regarding research and technical climate finance thinking, all of the fun things. So through interviews, community visits, and further research, we collaboratively identify project opportunities with each nation and body that can be funded through various carbon finance pathways. So sometimes it might be carbon offsets, sometimes it might be government initiatives and or philanthropy, and sometimes it might be a combination of many different things. So far, our engagements have helped us better understand what individual community needs are and what the through line is across nations. So at the end of this project, each nation and regional body will be receiving a report tailored specifically to them. And through this work, one of the most exciting things for our team is that we really see the potential to establish long-term partnerships with Coast Funds, with the specific communities we're working with, and with the regional bodies too. And I think I just want to emphasize that our team is very excited about this work and we really do see the potential there. We're excited to see what comes. So next, I want to talk about an emerging opportunity that combines all 3 of our strategic priorities: capacity building, policy development, and on the ground work. And that emerging opportunity is happening in Canada's North. So a bit of background on this. In 2020, Joseph spoke at the Northwest Territories Conservation Network gathering in Yellowknife. And after that, Makeway invited us to explore the potential of natural climate solutions in Northern Canada. So this opportunity came after some developments in federal policy that showed a real promise for natural climate solutions, but had limited interest in the immense potential of tundra, peatland, and wetland carbon projects, which is northern landscapes. So we started this work in 2021 by holding 2 virtual engagement sessions. The first was more of an info session, and the second was a roundtable format. And both of those sessions centered around climate change and natural climate solutions in the North. So the attendees were quite wide ranging. They included government representatives from the Northwest Territory and from federal ministries, as well as members of the Cutlo-Diche First Nation and the Huitzilopochtli First Nation. And we came out of those info sessions with some really great takeaways that, if time permits, I will get into in about 2 slides from now. So with this work, we have faced a few hurdles. The first was that this work started in 2021, which, as we all know, was a COVID year. And while we do consider our virtual sessions to be quite a success, they can never really fully replicate the value that face-to-face meetings hold. And then in addition to that, our team has had some turnover and we lost the lead of this project who was holding a lot of those relationships. And so we've had to work quite a bit to pick this project up again. But with that being said, our whole team is super eager to re-engage in this work. And we really feel that there's a significant opportunity here. And we think that a lot of the principles and approaches in our work to date could be applied to exploring opportunities on these northern landscapes. We really want to learn more about what northern communities are thinking. And we were considering planning a trip up to Yellowknife in the spring to engage with the government of Northwest Territories. And right now we would love to and appreciate any advice from any of you on how to go about re-engaging and building up these northern relationships. And that is something that we would like to dive into deeper with you. So Chuck, how continue? Okay, so now I just want to take a couple moments to share what we've learned from the work we've done, because this is really what is informing us moving forward. So from our Coast Funds communities, we've heard there's a need for long-term sustainable funding, which will be no surprise to any of us, I'm sure. We've heard that there's a need for better understanding of policy and regulations when it comes to carbon finance pathways. And we've heard that new revenue sources must increase the well-being of community. From our partners at BCAFN, we've heard there needs to be a continued push for carbon policy that centers Indigenous rights and that doesn't exclude nations from participating in the market, and that there continues to be a need for easily accessible information on carbon, as well as other conservation finance pathways. And from those info sessions in the Northwest Territories, some of what we heard was from the government of Northwest Territories, we heard that there's a high level of interest in natural climate solutions. From community members, we heard that there's a significant interest in learning more about conservation finance opportunities specific to northern landscapes. There was a lot that was coming up here around IPCAs. And with this, we also heard that there's a need to better understand climate impacts on carbon in the north. So there's not a lot of data yet. We also heard that there's a substantial capacity issue across all sectors in the north. And something that came up again was the need for more plain language resources. So after reflecting on this, we have learned a few things. First, if we think back to our team's strategic priorities, they continue to be relevant and in line with community asks, which is awesome. Secondly, there's a definite role for Ecotrust Canada to play in bridging capacity and policy gaps. And third, there's a need for these tools to be more deeply co-developed with communities. And that last one, I think our team is really stoked on and really looking forward to getting into that in 2023. So just to wrap up, through all of this work, our theory of change continues to resonate. We believe that when communities have access to appropriate carbon finance pathways and build capacity to follow them, they deliver nature-based projects that manifest their community priorities. Successful projects prove the possible and pave the way for more. Thank you all for your attention, and I think we're going to open the floor to questions now.